try to do that. How many of you guys are nervous about the coming year? Raise your hand. All right. The rest of you are liars, okay? Thank you for your candor and honesty, those of you who raised your hands. So there are differentials, of course, in how nervous people might be when it comes to the presentations that we give today. We tried to put together a whole host of presentations. Some of them work, some of them don't. Let me make sure this thing is on. Oh, it's off. How about that? So you have to turn it on before it works. Who knew? This presentation is advice. Okay? Some of you may be able to read this, some of you may not be able to read it. These are parents reacting with trauma to the idea of their sons and daughters leaving home and coming to us. I've been working in student affairs here at the university for a number of years. This is an actual photo of your sons and daughters, or son reacting to the prospect of leaving home as well. In that time, I've gotten a lot of questions, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of communications to us here at the university with various things that parents are concerned about and are curious about as to what to expect in their first year, which for some of you will actually be a first year. For others of you, maybe it's the second time you've been through this. Maybe it's the third time you've been through this. Maybe, God bless you, it's the sixth or seventh time you've been through this. Because people are usually unconscious in the back of the room. But it is something that we started to do a number of years ago when I first began doing this Dean of Students thing in 2002 at the Lincoln Center campus, putting together a session that was specific to the experience of parents and some advice. I now have the benefit, shortly after starting my tenure at the Lincoln Center campus, I became a father, I became a parent. I now have two daughters, one of whom is going to be making the transition to college. So next year I will have even more to talk about and more to add to the presentation that isn't just based on first-person inquiries that are coming to me over the phone or to my staff over the phone, but there will be things that I have experienced in the process of transition, that I experienced through the process of navigating June, July, August, and then September, October, November, December. We'll break in there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays, and then all the way through to May. I'll have that under my belt next year, which will be good. But we do have a pretty good set of questions, a pretty good set of experiences that we can pull from, a pretty good set of challenges that we can talk with you about here very candidly at the front end of orientation. What you're going to see, hopefully, through the course of the presentation is that so much of the answers that we're able to give you, so many of the things that we're going to be mentioning are going to circle back to our mission as an institution. Our job here at the university is not simply to run a university. Our job here is to run a Jesuit Catholic university, a university in the Ignatian tradition, which you've heard talked about in the various sessions as early as 10:30 today. And we're going to be challenging your sons and daughters, and to some extent, some of that challenge will also fall on you to help us in educating your students in the course of their first year, to be a part of that education. Sometimes by doing things to be a part of that education, other times by not doing things to be a part of that education. We'll talk a little bit about that and our advice along those lines. And I want to say, though we are going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the more difficult things that can come up, we're going to talk about those things in fairly candid terms. Things like alcohol and other drugs, things like sexual assault, things like mental health. We're going to talk about those things. But we are also going to emphasize right up front that for most of you, those things aren't going to be coming up. They're not going to be challenges that you're going to experience. For most of you, this is going to be great. This is going to be amazing. And it's going to be amazing and great for your students. Though they are doing their best and expending an incredible amount of energy right now, trying to look nonchalant about this whole thing, and trying not to make eye contact with you at any point in the day, that's also something that I've seen over 30 years too. Normal stuff, all right? I'm looking forward, I've got two daughters, one of whom is going to, the one who's going to college in August, is going to be participating in some orientation programs very soon. She will walk in the door ahead of us and wave over her shoulder, and that'll be that. She'll be done. And And the other one, I'm thinking maybe some sort of replay of her clinging to our leg when we brought her to elementary school for the first time. Figuratively, not literally, hopefully. But we'll see how it goes. But I want to emphasize that though we're going to talk about the challenges, I want to talk about the challenges in fairly candid ways. This is not in any way to send the message, to imply, to say that you're going to encounter these challenges. Just that we're prepared for it. We've dealt with them before. We've seen virtually everything there is to be seen. Knock on wood, someone. Virtually everything there is to be seen. Maybe 2 years ago, I probably would have said that too. Then we had this pandemic thing that I heard about. We've had, months on campus, weird things that have come up in the public health arena before. We've had to deal with people not getting vaccinated and all that stuff. This was new and exciting. Now we're really, really good at it. Really good at it. We were able to stay open in the course of the year with the considerable challenges that posed. It would have been far easier for us to say, see you guys in 2021, back in 2020 when we took the decision to remain open. It would have been much easier. But that wouldn't have been, again, us doing what we need to do when it comes to our mission. I think I've already covered this. I'm going to skip around on this presentation an awful lot, but that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about, in the course of the day, new friends that you're very excited about. Other new friends that maybe you're not as excited about. We'll talk about them as well. We're going to talk about the life of the mind, right? The core of their experience here. It'll be a little piece of my presentation because the life of the mind has been covered by the colleges earlier today, Fordham College of Rose Hill and Gabelli School of Business, which is where that presentation should come from. But I do have some advice for you, and some advice for you as you are asked for advice by your students about how they should approach studies here, about how they should approach work with our faculty. So I'll give you that in a few moments as well. New relationships, all very exciting, right? Some of them will be presented to you as, relationships that are going to last forever and ever. Others of them will be presented to you as something else. 99% of the relationships that we see, presented to parents and encountered by our students in their first year last that, unending period between August and, maybe January when they come back to school, right? That's typical, right? So new relationships are a part of the experience and are going to be a wonderful part of the experience. We're going to talk about the challenges that those new relationships can pose as well. But they're a good piece of this. We want to emphasize that. We want to emphasize our community because so much of what we offer in terms of support, in terms of help, in terms of assistance in the course of the year, that doesn't come from guys like me in business attire working on the campus. It comes from the whole community. And we'll talk about all the various people, from students and student leaders, all the way up through people like me, deans of students and assistant vice presidents who are arrayed around the campus to help students make the adjustment, but also assist them when they run into those challenges and when they run into those problems. And that's the community. Keep checking with us and keep checking in the course of the year related to COVID at the fordham.edu/coronavirus portion of our website. I'm hoping to have very, very few updates to provide you in the course of the year. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, knocking on wood, saying lots of prayers that we are in the fairly permanent valley of what has been a bit of a roller coaster in terms of managing the infection on campus. I hope you're joining me in those prayers. I'm sure you are. But that's the place to keep looking, and that's the place to find updates like the one that just came out that have made it possible for all of us to be present on the campus, indoors and out, get vaccinated without masks. Very important milestone. Hopefully something that we're going to be able to maintain in the course of the year. So hopefully it will all be good news. I think it will be. But if it's not, be aware that we've been through an entire year of managing this on the campus, and we're pretty darn good at this point. It's not fun. It can be difficult. It can be challenging for us as well as your students to have to navigate an academic year, classrooms, activities, socializing on campus. All those things are really profoundly affected by some of the measures that we needed to take in the course of the year, many of which we're really excited to be rolling back soon, right? Masks right up front, socializing and social distancing measures that we've had. Our students were really not thrilled when we announced that we had to curtail visitation between the residence halls, right? You should have heard some of the conversations that we had when we had to announce that. We really didn't feel, and we think we were right in this, we really didn't feel that we could manage the infection rate on campus in a responsible way, that we were allowing people to visit each other constantly between the residence halls. It still gave us a run for our money, this pandemic, no question, on campus. But we think we would have had that run for our money happen right around September 5th if we had allowed a visitation between the buildings on campus. But, and the students are no doubt very happy about this, we do anticipate restoring visitation on campus. And so I think it's something that we can do and will probably be announced somewhere over the summer. And that's an important piece of good news that we're going to be sharing with you shortly, we think. So that's COVID stuff. Like I said, they're spending a lot of energy trying to look nonchalant about this, but it's completely normal. It's very important for us to be together in this and sending the message that it is completely normal for them to feel a little bit overwhelmed. That's okay. If they didn't feel some of that, I would be worried about if they were being maybe too nonchalant about starting this process with us and making the transition to college work. We here at the university are used to dealing with students who are wearing their feelings on their sleeves about that transition, and they're worried about the transition. We're also used to dealing with students who are more reticent about it, have a harder time sharing that with us. Right? But one of the things that we're trying to send to them as a message through our orientation program, through our resident assistants and our commuter assistants, the programming that we do in the beginning of the year is that it's okay to be feeling this. And if they feel like, and they really believe with us that it's okay to be feeling this, and if they can admit to you and talk to you about feeling a little bit overwhelmed, we can help them with that. Right? And we do this tried and true parental thing that I'm sure each of you are familiar with. As you've raised your students, raised your sons and daughters, we repeat ourselves over and over and over and over again. And we do that because we're aware that when they come in looking sort of shell-shocked, kind of like they sometimes do at the summer orientation program, though this is a little bit more relaxed than the main orientation program, we know that they're not going to absorb and retain everything that we present to them in the course of that Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday main orientation program that kicks off on Sunday, August 29th with move-in and all that stuff. It's too many people. It's too many variables. It's too much input. It can be a bit overwhelming. So we're going to circle back to them constantly. We're also going to be in touch with them over the summer with emails and communications and some actual tasks that they have to perform in order to prepare, get them up to speed in some of the areas that we're going to talk about here today. But I want to send a message, and hopefully you can join me in sending this message, that feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now. You're not going to hear from me that that's a danger sign. You're going to hear from me that that's completely normal. They should feel a little bit overwhelmed right now. Everyone else is. Some students are just better at hiding it, like my older daughter. We're here to help with all of those feelings that they're encountering right now. I'm not going to run down definitions of all of the roles that we have on campus, but the concept that we work with here at the university is in so many ways to surround your students, your sons and daughters, with these concentric rings of support in as wide a variety and diversity of support as we can possibly provide. Students helping other students is really that first ring. That's why we hire those 200 screaming and yelling, extreme extrovert orientation leaders who you will encounter when you drive onto campus. If you were driving onto campus and you've got the station wagon or the SUV loaded to bear with all of their belongings, you're going to be essentially attacked in the parking lot by our orientation leaders. Right? Your student will be in the back seat trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, while you will be grinning from ear to ear up in the front seat because of what you're seeing in terms of the community at welcome. Orientation leaders are sort of that first concentric ring. And then you're going to drive up to our residence halls, you're going to park, you're going to get out, we're going to empty your car, and we're going to move all your stuff into the building. And we're going to subject your student to more of that welcome, more of that extroversion. And you're going to be happy about it, and they're going to look like they want to, run from campus. But that's okay. That's all part of the experience as well. Right? And we try to tune that to our introverts as well, not just our extroverts. But orientation leaders is one of the first concentric rings. Then they're going to have that night a meeting with their resident assistant in the residence hall, or if they're a commuter, with one of their commuter assistants outside the residence halls in this building or elsewhere on campus. They're going to be working with their orientation leaders in small groups. They're going to encounter student leader after student leader, and then administrator after administrator, the resident directors that in the residence hall supervise the resident assistants, the assistant directors, part of my staff in student affairs and student life and student services. We work with those resident assistants and are the referral point. If your sons and daughters have problems with the resident assistants through their advice, the advice of peers, which is often the kind of advice that is the most heard by our first-year students. If that's not good enough, if the problems or difficulties that they're encountering are more difficult than our student leaders can handle, they refer them to our full-time staff, our professional staff. Some of those folks are resident ministers, some of those folks are professional student affairs people. Some of those folks, and we'll talk about these more specialized roles on campus, are also our counselors, clinical counselors, as well as pastoral counselors on campus who can assist students with more heavy-duty problems. Those concentric rings, many of them, people who look like them, students, right, who are approachable, and who are telling them, come and see me, come and ask me questions, come and present to me any problems they have. But also people in offices around the university who can help with more difficult problems, more sensitive problems, more confidential and private problems. All of those things are the things that we surround our staff with. Some photos of various of the students who help us with that, various of the staff who help us with that. I want to emphasize this right here. You may have already received some communication about our freshman year formation class, right? Our first year formation class. If you're worried, or if your students are worried about that transition, we actually have a class they can be in for about 1 hour per week that is simply about how best to make that transition, how best to be successful in college, how to deal with all the challenges, many of which we're going to be talking about in the course of this presentation. Have them look at it, and if they're interested, register for that freshman year, that first year formation class, because it's an experienced administrator, experienced student leader presenter, people who can help them, who've been through all of this, who talk to students about all of this stuff, who can help them with that transition. It's a class about how to essentially go to college, and a great resource for students, not only to get some advice, right, to be in a classroom with other students who are going through the same thing and want to, or eager to talk about their own challenges, so it normalizes that feeling again, very important. But also, they'll just have a cohort of people that they see every week that they can meet in a very social, very relaxed setting. It's not the formality of the classroom, right, or the competition of the classroom, or the, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe I didn't do the reading of the classroom. Instead, it's just a conversation about how to be successful as a student. It's one of the most important things that we do. Mr. Balistrassi, who runs the orientation program who I introduced this morning, the guy with bow ties running around, he runs the program. It's a great program. Consider that. Suggest it to your students if they're nervous about the transition. The transition to college level work. Just a few pieces of advice about this. Normal transition, something normal for students to be a little bit nervous about. Right? Our faculty will, at the first moment they encounter your students, your sons and daughters in the classroom, will, in the form of their syllabus, be issuing an invitation to your students to come and see them, to come and meet them, to talk with them, not just inside the classroom, but during something called office hours. Put the hours right on the syllabus, along with their email address, the ones who are really accessible, put their cell phone number on there, the phone number on there. They don't do that just for ha-has. They do that because they are inviting your students to encounter them, not just inside the classroom where it could be 20 or 30 students, but where they can have a one-to-one conversation. Encourage all of your students, right? They may be reluctant to do this, but encourage all of your students to Make an appointment. Go and see that faculty. Get to know who that faculty member is. Make a face associated with the name on the roster from that class. Our faculty are hired for mission here at the university. Very serious about getting to know your students. But there's so many, right? They're not able to do that as effectively as they would like. So they invite students to come in and see them outside of that lecture hall, that academic classroom environment. That's what office hours are for. Have them make that connection. Right? And have them make that connection even before they encounter something that they are worried about or challenged by in the classroom, or a problem that needs to be solved. Just have them go in and, introduce themselves to the faculty. Faculty really are, by putting out that syllabus, issuing that invitation. Tell your students, tell your sons and daughters to take advantage of that. Connect with the faculty. It's a part of why they're there. They take that responsibility and that mission, again, very seriously. They want to connect and they want to know who your sons and daughters are. So tell them to do that. Belonging. Maybe the most pivotal, important factor in student transition, student success right off the bat in any college environment, in any environment really, in any community. It's something we take very seriously here at the university. A piece of advice that will assist when it comes to that feeling of belonging. I'll get to some statistics in a few moments. I'd like to plow into our presentation some numbers, so it's not just me sitting up here telling you what we do. I want to show you what we do because we survey and do assessment of our student body to get a sense of whether we're being as effective as we might think we are in terms of having an effect. And one of the measures that we have, I'm going to show you in a few moments, is the measures that we look at related to belonging. But one of the most important milestones in the course of the student's calendar, right in the beginning of the fall semester, is something called the club fair. Some of our students, some of our parents not familiar with the college environment may have the assumption that the club fair is just sort of, when you kind of arrange your extracurriculars, fun stuff that you want to do gets arranged. And when you look at all the tables that we array, 150 or so strong, 160 or so strong around Edwards Parade, all of our club students, student club and organization leaders come out, presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, treasurers, and members, and they're there to recruit your students, your sons and daughters, to be a part of their clubs. It's far more than fun and games, however. It's one of the most important milestones in terms of joining and participation and taking the initiative when it comes to belonging, that all-important feeling, that all-important emotion, that all-important perception that students have about their experience here at the university. This is a very intentional act on the part of the university, on the part of student affairs, to ask our student leaders to come out, and our student leaders embrace it, and they all show up for it because they know how pivotal and important it was for them in terms of their own belonging, their own joining, their own participation in the community. Make sure, first day of classes, right? So when you call them in the morning or check in with them during the course of the day, or you text them, first question is, did you wake up in time to, shower and do all that stuff and take yourself to that 8 o'clock class? That's number one. And number two is, are you getting to the club fair this afternoon? Dean Rogers told me about it. He told me that you really should go to that, and you should allow yourself to be recruited by one of our 160 clubs and organizations. Student government, cultural clubs, interest clubs, professional clubs. You're going to be out there grabbing your students by the lapels and dragging them over to the table and having them sign up on their laptop. Very important. Pivotal moment in the experience here at the university for students to get there, meet our students, meet our student leaders. It's raucous, it's a little crazy. I walk around, they go kind of bananas, when they calm down as I go through the crowd, and then they go bananas again behind me. Kind of funny to watch. Right? Our student newspapers are there. Literary magazines are there, our dance clubs are there, our a cappella groups are there. We've got something for everybody here, I think. If we don't have it, students can form new clubs and organizations, and our student government consider those applications, and they approve all of them. So they're running out of money. They approve so many of them. Get them to the club fair. Very important. Here's how we do when it comes to feeling part of my college. It's a survey that we do. We do a number of surveys in the course of the year and ask students if they strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree when it comes to feeling part of the college. And 8 out of 10 of our students either agree or strong. We do a national survey. We weren't able to do it this past year because of the pandemic, a small matter of the pandemic. But we do very well in this one. 5th highest at 245 surveyed institutions in a huge, I think, 200,000 plus sample of college students across the country, institution after institution of all sizes, shapes, and forms. We do pretty well when it comes to these measures. Among them, you know, the sense of community inside of our residence halls. Diverse interactions. How are we rated when it comes to diverse interactions? 22nd out of 245. Very important measures. So, showing you some data. When it comes to diverse interactions and how seriously we take our mission-driven responsibility to assure that every member of our community's dignity is respected and indeed celebrated here, we take that extremely seriously. And every year there's an incremental, especially last year, and I think again continuing to this year, a tremendous interest in assuring that we're the kind of community where respect for every member of the community, regardless of ethnicity, sexual orientation, race, religion, or lack of religion, is respected. Tremendous interest in this community in assuring that that's the case. And we do take that very seriously and have an entire portion of our website devoted to all the actions we take, not simply in reaction to incidents that could be occurring on campus, right? But proactive training, education, messages to the community. And you can see that at fordham.edu/actions against bias. Take a look at that when you actually it's fordham.edu/against bias, a little bit shorter. Take a look at that to have a sense of what kinds of things we do here at the university to educate our community and to hold ourselves as well as our student members of the community to very high expectations when it comes to respect for one another. It's an important part of our mission. I want to talk a little bit about the experience of commuters as well. You might have noticed we have some construction on campus, right out front of the McGinley Campus Center. We're building a brand new, state-of-the-art, beautiful campus center. And a big piece of that, you know, some of this presentation, I was just showing you some data from our residential community, but I want to show you some, you know, some eye candy related to our campus center, because that's really going to be, we think, something of a combination of kitchen and living room for our commuting population. Our resident population as well, but they have the residence halls too, right? And they pay for them, as you know, those who are paying for housing. Our commuters will, in so many ways, have this as an important new addition to the community. It's going to be beautiful. I got a tour of it 2 weeks ago. Even in its very rough form, it is going to be spectacular and a massive improvement over the 1957 structure in which you're now sitting, which we love. Right? I'm a big fan of the year in terms of architecture and all that stuff. LaGuardia is what this but this is going to be beautiful and an important new centerpiece for the campus, and one that really is intentionally designed to be a place for our commuters. Right now they have a lounge in the basement of the building that they've been in for decades, and they've joined our chorus in complaining about it and needing the campus center. Since I've been the Dean of Students at this campus since 2006, it's been an important part of our strategic plan to get the fundraising, get the money, get the plan, get the architect to build this new, you know, there on our campus for our commuters, and it's finally happening. It's going to open in October right through that wall. It's going to be great. So I want to share that with you as well. Head back to the residents. Roommates. I started doing this in 16, 17 years ago. Very scientific survey of parents in this presentation. How many of you have your sons and daughters in their own rooms at home? Awesome. Well, in our infinite wisdom in higher education, we've decided to take those students and bring here and put them into a 14 by 17 cinder block box with someone they've really never met except through social media. If there is one thing, and I'm not even sure of this, if there is one thing that's good about social media, it's that they're actually kind of getting to know each other right now, choosing roommates right now, unless you're my daughter, who's not doing that yet. We're on her about it. It actually helps us in a natural and organic way to have students on social media talking to each other about living together, right? There's a little bit of weird beauty contest stuff going on there too as well, which can be uncomfortable. And it's no guarantee that everything's going to be great, right? You may get a call in the beginning of the year with descriptions that sort of look like this, right? This is not who you placed your sons and daughters with, just so you know. Scout's honor. Right? But again, being put into this environment, and if you're not having been used to this environment, it can pose some challenges. And small conflicts can feel big. Right? Our university feels very strongly that that, in and of itself, is a part of the educational process that we offer to students. The give and take, the negotiation, the compromise, the getting to know you, getting to know how to get along with you, is a part of the education we offer. Plus, we don't have a building of only singles for everybody on campus. We don't have even the possibility of placing someone in a place where they would live alone. But we think that there's something to be learned from this. We really do. And we will ask your sons and daughters, your students, to make a go of it, to try. Right? If something is happening in the room that's problematic, we use our judgment in terms of, granting room changes, of course. But we have a freeze on room changes in the beginning of the year for that first month, in order to encourage students not to immediately bail out and to give it that old college try, as they say. We think that's very important. We think that's part of the education that we offer here at the university. We do not respond like the concierge desk at the Ritz-Carlton when students come to us and say they want a room change. We're going to ask them why. We're going to ask them to talk with us about the challenges that they face. We're going to ask them to take some advice, right? Our resident assistants go through training on how to work with students on roommate conflicts. The resident directors that the resident assistants report to go through extensive training and have very good long years of experience helping students with roommate conflicts. If we need to take action, we will. Right? We will take action on threats. We will take action on drugs and alcohol. Right? If those become problems in the room, and we'll talk about drugs and alcohol in a few moments. We don't keep students in the room, heedless of the concerns that are being brought to us. But if it's the usual stuff, right? When we have guests, when we study, when the light goes on, when the light goes off, how many inches the window can be open. These are real things. We will talk with your sons and daughters about it. Right? One of the most common things that's reported. I get a call in my office, a parent wants to talk to me, they want to tell me what it is, I call back, get on the phone. They describe a situation that is happening in the room. Their daughter called them at 3 in the morning and they're very upset because their roommate is staring at them. This happens every year. It's like an epidemic. That word to use these days, but it's like an epidemic of staring. We will help with that. We've encountered that before, right? Has your daughter asked the roommate to stop staring? We are filled with advice that's helpful like that. But again, it's that 14 by 17 box thing, right? Something that, it may happen inside of your own homes between siblings, which is no big deal. Stop staring at it. That becomes a very big deal inside of that environment. We're here to help with that, right? And so we will help with that. We will have a process to help with that. And what helps with that as well is something that you can do, or maybe better put, not do. You may get that call at 3 in the morning. My roommate's staring at me. It's terrible. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if this place is for me. I don't know if Fordham is the right school. I should have chosen that other institution. This is just not going to work. Can you come pick me up? You laugh. It could happen to you. It may have happened to some people in the room already with older siblings. Don't do it. Don't come and pick them up. All right? Call us the next day. We'll talk to you about it. We'll talk you through it. But if you pick them up, or if you make an arrangement to have them come home that first weekend, or that second weekend, or even that third weekend, what are you doing? You're making it harder for them to make that adjustment. You're making it harder for them to get to know that roommate. You're making it harder for them to be in the programs and events and club and organization meetings. You're making it harder for them to make the connections that will get them through some of the other things that are happening that will be challenges in the course of the year. I know they love your lasagna. I'm aware of that. We have food on campus. We pay for it, right? Have them eat that. I know your washer and dryer are fantastic. We have washers and dryers here too. You paid for it. Have them use them here. Don't come and pick them up. Pretend you're away. Seriously. Because if you do come and pick them up too early, I say give it at least a month, all right? At least a month. Family weekend's coming up. October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Perfect time for a reunion. Perfect time. You've given them enough time to make those connections. My sister, she loves that I use this example. She's grown up now, it's good to know. But she came to school here. I was a young professional here at the university. Homesick from the millisecond that she stepped out of the car. Right? On the phone with my mom. Don't do it. Don't come and get her. They listened. She developed the calluses, those emotional calluses, the fortitude to make that transition. Had they come and picked her up, I don't think she would still be here. I think she would transfer. And I mean that. Broke to death, and I know that story. All right. Let's move on. More serious things, more serious challenges, mental health. The majority of what you encounter when it comes to mental health on campus are these things, right? We all know about the very, very, very serious things that make the papers that our cohort is encountering. Some of the challenges that students go through in the course of the year when it comes to mental health. Very quick advice for you on that, right? Don't, when it comes to counseling, when it comes to support, when it comes to medication, continue. Easy transition. Gradual transition. Sometimes our students have the feeling that they're going to flip a switch, they're going to arrive on campus, and everything's going to be completely new, they're going to have a completely new life, and none of the supports that they've very successfully used to navigate high school, middle school, etc., are necessary anymore. They want to just sort of become a different person. Work with them and advise them to go gradually, go slowly. Work with us here on campus to connect with support on campus. Our counseling center is excellent. Our pastoral counselors in the campus ministry are excellent. We can work with you on referrals and local resources as well. Gradually is the Bible. Please make sure that they take that seriously. You guys signal me in terms of how much time I still have left. How much time do I still have left? 20. Wow, I'm doing pretty well. Okay. All right. When they appear, I always think I'm like, it's 5 minutes. Alcohol and drugs. I put this up here. People still do recognize him. I'm getting to the point where there may be a generational transition where I have to find somebody else. Right? But there he is, right? And I put him up there in part because there can be a generational transition that has to be made as well between the elements of alcohol and other drug use on campus that are understood to be what college students do, and the elements that are more serious. These are the elements that can be more serious. I'm going to zoom in on John Belushi and see if I can get this to work. Some statistics there that I'd like to share with you guys. I used to put these up on the screen, and I would have to do the preface to say these are not Fordham statistics. We're candid, but there's a mom fainting in the background. These are national statistics, and these are national statistics statistics that I offer because I want people to understand why we take alcohol and other drugs as seriously as we do. Because there can be harm that occurs. And we do, through the course of orientation and through the course of education that's going to happen this summer online. Right? We're sending online resources home to your students, surveys that they have to fill out, but also online education courses that they're going to be doing to prepare them for a more mature approach to alcohol and other drugs than sometimes they come out of high school with. Right? We long ago abandoned the sort of Eisenhower era, chastisement that sometimes occurred in these environments related to alcohol and other drugs to adopt instead what's called a harm reduction approach and acknowledgement that our students are going to use alcohol and other drugs. Of course they already are. Right? So they're not going to suddenly arrive here and decide that the Dean of Students is so scary that all guy at the front of orientation is going to not go near beer and not go near other things. That's not going to happen. We acknowledge that. We know that. Our intention is to educate them and to get them to think a little bit more deeply than they typically would as their brains are still forming from adolescence about the risks associated that we see up on the screen related to alcohol and other drugs. We want them to stop and think. And if they don't stop and think the first time, when they come through the process, the student conduct process, it's not a zero tolerance process, but it's a meeting for every violation process. They're going to talk with an adult in the community, a trained hearing officer, who's going to talk with them about making better decisions related to alcohol and other drugs in a formal process. We also have on campus what's called the medical amnesty policy that assures that if they're calling for help for themselves, if they've had too much to drink, right, they're not going to be put through the formal student conduct process. They're still going to meet with an adult as a follow-up, but we're going to get the medical assistance first and foremost as a priority. We're going to encourage that call for themselves or for their friends. That medical amnesty process or policy is put into place very intentionally to assure that we're saving lives first and then educating second. But that education is absolutely indispensable and it's definitively a part of what we do here at the university to try and drive home the understanding that they need to have less of an adolescent, less of a 4 years out of the 8th grade approach to beer and pot and other things than maybe they do right now. We need to use this time here at the university to grow up a little bit when it comes to making good ethical decisions for themselves when it comes to alcohol and drugs and not respond like as much of an adolescent. That's our process. And we do pretty well with that. I'll show you some more statistics here. Survey of our community, it's a little bit dim here, but 2,490 students in a 2019 survey. We want our students to be very aware, right, that we are concerned as an institution with their alcohol and other drug use. A real warning sign for institutions that have a low number in that topic. Right? They're not aware that we care, right? Why should they care? They're very aware here at the university that the university is concerned. We know that we have a program here. Programs that can assist, educational programs, but also a formal program in response to the student conduct process with hearing officers. Right? First time they come through, you're going to be made aware in their first year. As the parents of first-year students, you're going to be a part of the process. You're going to get a letter at home. They're transported to the hospital. Some schools don't call you at home. We do. We're going to wake you up. Apologies in advance. We will tell you when we bring your sons or daughters to the hospital for being overserved or other issues related to substance abuse. I'm a little bit worried about these guys. That's why I have job security here. We're working on them in the course of the year. 94.2% know that we have alcohol and drug policies. We talk about them before they get here. We talk about them at orientation. Right? And then we, again, repeat ourselves over and over and over again. We talk about them through something called the first-year core program. All of our first-year students, leaders, and residents are invited to come back meet with our alcohol and other drug education people, our people from University Health Service and Counseling and Psychological Services on sexual assault, with our public safety people, right? And our people from Residential Life and our Office for Multicultural Affairs on civility on campus, and how we treat them. I think we do pretty well. Still working on these guys, 1.5% here. I don't think we have any rules. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about something that has been in the news, of course, and has gotten tremendous media attention for how it's been handled nationally. Sexual misconduct on college campus, believe it or not. This is something that's lost statistically in the coverage nationally of sexual misconduct on college campuses. The environment of college, of universities, these communities are actually protective factors for this age group when it comes to sexual misconduct and sexual assault. That's an important element of this, in part because universities like ours take very seriously our responsibility to talk with students about healthy relationships, about resources on campus, about reporting. And we emphasize from the moment they get here, even before they get here, they're going to get an online education that's coming. It's not only alcohol and other drugs, but it's also sexual misconduct. Right? Definition of consent. How to report on campus. Normalizing, right? Normalizing the concerns that students have when it comes to sexual misconduct. Ensuring that they know we are here to help. So we're going to do all that education, online survey education over the summer. Education sessions and orientation, really good ones, very frank ones, right? We're a Jesuit Catholic institution. That doesn't mean we're sort of, skirting this issue. We're talking very frankly about responsibility when it comes to relationships and when it comes to sexual activity. We do that because we take a harm reduction approach, not chastisement about this. We're never going to say, make any sort of moral pronouncements related to any of these things. We are, however, going to be saying to students that if you are in the position of being intimate with another student, respect for their dignity, right, and consent absolutely must be something that you're thinking about. And we emphasize that very strongly in the course of summer, at orientation with the sessions that we have, but also in the follow-up sessions. I mentioned that first-year core program is a dedicated session related to sexual misconduct, reporting, consent, and healthy relationships. One that doesn't in any way abandon our Jesuit Catholic principles and values, but acknowledges that our students, many of them are sexually active. We have to give them resources to handle themselves well, both the young men and the young women, gay and straight, when it comes to sexual activity. We do that education in the summer, and they take a survey. And then they take another survey after all those orientation sessions and first-year core programming sessions. We want to see if we move the needle in terms of knowledge. And we do every year. We have moved the needle. Their level of knowledge when it comes to understanding consent, right? Understanding risk, understanding reporting, understanding resources, always moves in the right direction here at the university. If it ever moves in the wrong direction, then we retool, we come up with training. We focus on alcohol education and conduct because, again, some of the statistics I put up there associated, sadly, with too much misconduct. Alcohol and other drug use is associated, does not excuse in any way, shape, or form, but is associated with high-risk behavior. So we emphasize alcohol and other drugs. And we have, even though it's after the fact, we have rapid and sensitive assistance in the form of trained staff members who in the minute that a student reports being a victim on campus, respond to that student with assistance and support. Rapid, thorough, and impartial investigation by our Department of Public Safety, referral to the student conduct process in my office, sometimes the cooperation and assistance of the New York City Police Department, all of it driven by what the complainant, the student who has made the report, wants to do in the process. We'll go as slow or as fast as that student wants. Students can come to us and ask for assistance from the university. Students can come to us and ask for assistance instead from outside of the university through law enforcement. Students can come to us and ask for both. Students can come to us and report and just get assistance and not report elsewhere, and not move forward in the process. All of those options are available to students. And this is a fair and impartial, has to be by law, fair and impartial approach to both investigation and the student conduct process that protects both parties. Because what has been presented to us in most of these cases are the tragedy of sexual misconduct and sexual assault on college campuses is one story that does not agree with another story. A very important element of our process is the equity and fairness of the process, and that we can guarantee. Similar rapid and formal response to bias. Less regulated, less rules and steps related to that, but quite similar in terms of rapid response with investigation, sometimes with work with local law enforcement, New York City Police Department, and referral to the conduct process. We do suspend and expel students from this university for violation of our sexual misconduct policy. Not every violation, because there's a range. Sometimes it's just words, other times it's action, sometimes it's assault. Right? But at the most serious level, we do separate students from the university for violation of our sexual misconduct policy, as well as our bias-related incidents policy. We take those things very seriously because they get to the core of our mission, how we treat one another and the dignity each of our students should be able to expect from their fellow students and the